Lost Boys, the motion picture soundtrack. One of my favorite films of all time also yields one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Not only does the movie fucking rock, but so does the soundtrack. It has a lot of cheesy 80s ballads, a lot of rock and roll, and some other weird oddities of music that just scream 80s overall. This album is a good listen, no, a great listen, and unlike most soundtracks, this soundtrack really does accompany the film perfectly. You think of the Lost Boys movie when you listen to the soundtrack. And that is what soundtracks are supposed to do in the first place. They're meant to accompany the film they're made for. It's the movie for your ears, basically. They're not meant to just be these compilations of songs that just showcase different artists. No. Otherwise, what would be the point? You could just go out and buy the records for all of the artists in the movie. But no, a soundtrack is the musical sister of the film it's made for. Or at least that's what a soundtrack is supposed to be. And that's what this soundtrack is to the Lost Boys film. And if you're lucky enough to have illegally downloaded the original score for the movie, which I don't think has ever been officially released, prepare to have your mind blown, because the score for this movie kicks ass. However, this soundtrack, the official soundtrack for the Lost Boys, will do you good enough to send you headfirst into that world of Santa Carla whenever you're driving in your car or listening to music on your MP3 player at work or whatnot. Anything you're doing instead of watching the actual film, the soundtrack will bring you back. My favorite songs off the album, or soundtrack, in no particular order, are I Still Believe by Tim Capello, Good Times by Annexus and Jimmy Barnes, Lost in the Shadows by Lou Gramm, Laying Down the Law by Annexus, Laying Down the Law by NXS, The People Are Strange remake by Echo and the Bunnymen, and of course, the most well-known track of the album, Cry Little Sister by G. Tom Mack. But the other 80s power ballads on the record, not listed just now, are good for a listen too. So, in closing, because the soundtrack only includes one of Thomas Newman's original score, that would usually deduct a point or two from my rating system. But since the soundtrack still manages to go above and beyond in its duties as a soundtrack to the film, this classic 80s soundtrack deserves nothing less than a 10 out of 10. A perfect 10. 10. Lost Boys, I love you, man. Go buy the soundtrack. Don't download it. Go buy it. Do it. Now. Lost Boys soundtrack, perfect 10. Death by stereo.